So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to once again Stumps, Umps, and More Beer Pumps. And I'm here again with Hugh Newsome of Premier Cricket Stats. How are you doing, Hugh?
How are we doing?
Good weekend?
A wet weekend.
I
Yeah,
think
wet
that's the
weekend,
best way to sum it up, isn't it? Yeah, some interesting weather around for all of us in the cricket world.
Yeah.
But there's quite a lot of games got played, and I've seen from the stats that you've put out already over the weekend some very impressive ones. In particular, a young 16-year-old as the highest Premier League score of the season of the weekend.
Of the weekend, yeah. I mean, let's have a look at him here. Ali Zeb, I mean, there's definitely a South bias to the stats, the national stats I was looking at this weekend.
They got away with the weather more than we did.
Yeah. There's a lot of games you got caught up our end and further north, and down south. I think they dodged the worst of it. But yeah, I mean, Ali Zeb, 16 years and 70 days, I think it said on Cricinfo.
Wow.
Essex 2's player. That's I think it looks like performance has been coming from him. He's certainly done well in the past. I don't think he's hit those numbers in Premier League cricket, but he's certainly helped his team out a fair bit. But that was a big score, and then to stick something up that's nationally important at that age is very, very impressive. So it'd be exciting to see that name. See how he goes. It's obviously it can lead to nothing, but I think he bowls as well. He's not. It's not a flash in the pan. It wasn't against a easy opposition or anything like that. It was a genuine bit of quality cricket. So it's lovely to see from a young guy.
Ali scored 154 and 180 balls. It was the only 150 of the week in the Premier Leagues around the country.
I think so. Yeah, that's as far as I've we're a little bit early with the scorecards. Most of them are live scored these days. Occasionally one sneaks up on me a day or two later, but they're I would think that's going to be the top score this weekend.
And it's interesting when you look at the top 5 scores last weekend, as you say, Wanstead, Barnt Green, Colchester, Harpenden and Burridge. You're just going south, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The wickets wise, it wasn't quite such. We haven't seen 8 wickets this weekend. There was 5 lots of 7 wickets.
5 and 7.
Let me just pull the chart up. That's sweet. There we go.
Vastly different between Mohammed Bilal for Woodlands with 7 for 20, all the way up to Uzama Mia with 7 for 98 for Colwyn Bay. But it's 7 wickets. Anyone who takes the 7th is going to be proud of that, aren't they?
That's it. Well, the one that jumps out of me is Ronaldo Mayo. Is he Zimbabwean? Is it South African or Zimbabwean? And he's cropped up a few times. He's certainly in amongst the wickets over there, and I think that's the Norfolk League. I think
Frinton-on-Sea versus Wisbech. It sounds definitely Norfolk to me.
Yeah. So he's certainly doing well, and he's getting runs as well. His run scoring has dropped off a little bit, but he certainly was getting a few not outs here and there. So, but yeah, he's certainly in amongst the wickets. I think that's his. Let me count them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for, and it's the second time he's got 7 wickets. But that's previous best was 7 for 80. This one's 7 for 44, so it's even better off 12 overs as well. So,
and it's definitely an interesting weekend when you can split the batters and the bowlers so easily, where the batters are all from down south more or less, and the bowlers 4 out of 5 are from north of the centre of the country.
I wonder what was happening up there. Yeah,
exactly.
I watched a bit of McIlroy in the golf yesterday. Did you see that?
Oh, that was the 427-yard drive.
Well, and just the wind that they were just sort of to the east of Edinburgh, and I mean the weather there was horrendous, and it reminded me of my cricket on Saturday afternoon. So to be playing golf to that level in that wind shows you what a quality player, and all of them are
incredible. All-round performances in the Premier League at the weekend, and there's some immense performances as always. And we're going to talk about one in a bit more detail shortly. But top of the tree for you was Aditya Ashok for Colchester. 135 and 6 for 40 in 15 overs. That's a decent day out, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think. I mean, the way I calculate this is a little bit back of the envelope. It's hard to split. To calculate this, it's more about how their performance influences the match, which, I'm trying to get a mathematical friend of mine to look into in more detail. But if I just run the national one for the season, I think that's right up there. This one takes a little bit longer because it's got to go into pretty much every single game. But yeah, that's right up there in terms of performances. I think it was about 6th or 7th in terms of best performance of the season. So it's not, he's not quite into the top 5 there.
Yeah, I think the guy in second place, we'll talk about his league in a second though, Savin Pereira, 116 off 125 balls for Attenborough, and then 5 for 14 off 9 overs. That's a decent strike rate and a hell of an economy rate when it comes to your bowling, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And it's just a contribution to the team. He's absolutely pulling that team along at the moment, because I think we discussed just off air just they're in their third from bottom, Attenborough. So to have a guy performing like that, he is absolutely crucial to the team's performance. Just back to that national all-rounder contributions. It's actually Eddie Ashok is top of that's come out top of my best performance of the season across the country. So 135 runs and then 6 wickets. That's jumped ahead of a lad from Payton, Saxena from Payton, who 148 he got and 5 wickets. So who's to judge whether 148 and 5 is better than 135 from 6? But I'd say 135 runs and 6 wickets is probably a better contribution. So
I'd totally agree on that without a shadow. So we talked last week about the Derbyshire County Cricket League and the Premier League, and I think we said this week we're going to get stuck into a little bit of the Notts Prem, and we'll do that by talking about the Notts Prem from top to bottom and pick out 1 or 2 of the highlights that have been going on. And right now, after 14 games, Kimberley Institute are top of the Prem on 86 points, but only I think it's on the back of the net run rate, because Cavaliers and Carrington are on 86 points as well. The league is stretched, though, all the way down to Mansfield Hosiery, who are on 16 points in 12th place. And as you've already said, your third from bottom, Attenborough, are being dragged along by Savin Pereira to keep them out of that relegation zone. But what's standing out in the Prem for you, in the Notts Prem in particular, Hugh?
Well, I think you always got Mansfield that they came up last season, and finding it tough as it is, in any of these Premier Leagues. It's just the 2 guys leading the runs, Nick Keast and Savin Pereira, are actually first. Nick Keast first in the nation in terms of runs scored, and Savin Pereira is third in the nation in terms of ECB Premier League run scorer. So the Derbyshire League did not have the big run scorers that the Notts League got this year. And Nick Keith's average 114, strike rate of over 100. That's a serious performance. He plays for Lincolnshire as well, I believe. He's a serious talent. Bowls as well. I think he's got 11 wickets. To look, 11 wickets at 37 as well. So he's contributing in a huge way to Cockney.
And like you say, compared to the Derbyshire, the amount of centuries that there's been in the Notts Prem this year is phenomenal in comparison, isn't it? I've just shut that page. Let me bring it back up. If I give you heads up here, just the top 5 players in the Notts Prem between them have scored 2, 6, 10, 14 centuries just between the top 5. That's phenomenal striking in any season, and there's still a good number of games to go there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. This is my Notts Prem page. So just looking into 2023, your high scores: Nick Keast 175 not out. Second, Nick Keast 161 not out.
Wow.
Third, you got Hassan Azad 143 for Plumtree. Sorry, I think that was against Woollerton. Sorry. That's against Plumtree. Savin Pereira there again, and then Akil Patel for Kimberley. But you've got, and that's the top 5. Let me just drop it down and see how many we've got. I'm having to extend we've got 27 hundreds in the Notts Prem this season. So Woollerton seems to be on the wrong end of a few of these. Just looking, I scanned down my list here. I've got
regularly getting hit.
Yeah. There's quite a few Woollerton on the wrong end of that, unfortunately. So
and Woollerton in the middle of the table.
Sort your bowling out, Woollerton.
Yeah, the middle of the table as well, Woollerton. So it's not as though the bottom are
no. Back of them. I mean, they're scoring them as well. So Hassan Azad's Woollerton. So and I think he's possibly their only 100. I know Daniel Andrew 101 not out as well. So they're doing well. But it's certainly runs flowing and at good strike rates.
It's amazing to think, isn't it? One county over, the differential between the two.
Yeah. I mean, Derbyshire's a lot hillier, isn't it? A bit damper, rain running across the square. Maybe it's that, maybe Notts have got a good supply of covers happening. And then we'll get those new covers next season in Derbyshire.
Exactly. Yeah. And also up there in the runs though in Nottinghamshire, we've already mentioned him, is Savin Pereira.
Absolutely. So he's 8-3. Yeah, so he's third nationally, 833 runs. His strike rate's 80. I mean, not to be complained about. And then we've got a Deploy brother, and I'm not going to pronounce he's third in the runs. I'm not going to pronounce his first name. I'll leave it to you with your African experience.
I think it's Zimus.
Yeah. There we go. Zimus Deploy, who's Loose Deploy's brother, I think. And both of them were playing for Kimberley at the weekend.
Yeah.
Loose they both got 50. And I noticed, much to my annoyance, that it's a new play cricket card. So there's 2 separate play cricket entries for Loose Deploy. At least 2. And he played last year in the Lancashire League and got 0 and 8 sub-proing. So he'll be pleased.
He got a weekend last week.
Yeah, he'll be pleased. He didn't have to drive all the way to Lancashire to get a duck. But yeah, Jimis he's on 556 runs at 42, with a very healthy 98 strike rate as well. So he's doing a good job for Kimberley.
Isn't the highest score of the season in the Notts Prem? I think it's in their Div 2 though. Was Tom Wood of Derbyshire?
Let's have a look. I probably got that. Let's have a look.
Tom scored 200 plus in a game.
Tom Wood 212 off 148 balls. Yeah.
That's very similar to the sort of strike rate he was striking at for Derbyshire in the T20 clearly as well.
Yeah, he had a good day out there. Yeah, that's a nice score, though, isn't it? Yeah.
And where is in the rankings, Tom?
Sorry, say that again.
Where is Tom in the rankings?
In terms of high score?
Yeah, in terms of total runs.
Well, obviously in Div, they're not combined. He is fourth in Div 2. 500 runs at 78. I don't know how many. It doesn't sound like he's played too many games there.
Exactly, because he's been playing for Derbyshire, the T20 as well.
Yeah.
Anyone else in the batters there stand out in the Notts League?
Let me just jump back to Div 1. There's 7 guys with over 500 runs at this stage. I'm always sort of looking at strike rate. So Kyle Simmons, 500 runs at 60, striking over 100.
Yeah.
And then Said Nazim at Westbridge Fordians, I think they're going reasonably well, aren't they? 436 runs at 108 strike rate at average of 40. So yeah, there's quite a few guys hitting big runs
and hitting them fast
and hitting them pretty quick. It's it makes such a difference to a team. Somebody comes out and does a bit of damage. It's heads drop and opposition slink away and bowlers get frustrated. So it's
most definitely. I suppose what we should do though is just look at the reverse. We're talking about the batters doing so well in the Notts Prem. There's some decent bowling going on there though as well.
Well, Kimberley are just having, they've got good batting and bowling depth, and that's why they're doing so well.
Yeah.
Just bring the table back up. Yeah, they're top with Cavs on this. So you've got James Hinson, 34 wickets.
Yeah.
At 11 and a half. So that's a big reason there. And Joseph Worrell at Cuckney as well, 29 wickets at 16. So anybody that's underneath 20 in the averages, and there's quite a few really contributing.
Haven't we got one of the Blatherwicks in the top few there as well?
Daniel Blatherwick at Hucknall, 24 wickets at 20. And then the economy rates are all pretty good as well. But James Hinson, Kimberley, less than 4 he's going for as well. So that's
forget my way of looking at these things. I always find it quite amusing that the Premier League is sponsored by Anzac Cricket, and then you've got the Blatherwicks of B3 doing really good there. So you have some good cricket people from around the area.
Absolutely,
some good publicity for their companies or their families' companies, or whichever.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. Let's hope they're using their own kit. They're not rebadging somebody else's kit. I mean, it could be. Family fallout there. Christmas.
We're not going to start any rumours, are we?
A Christmas ruined, yeah.
Yeah, without a shadow. Have you seen any sort of patterns in the Notts Prem at all in terms of pros, overseas pros in bowlers versus batters?
It's difficult to pick out. I mean, you've got, obviously, I don't have a sort of on my stats database. Sure. I don't have a flag saying pro, although I am working on that. You don't quite know who's a pro and who's not a pro, but certainly the teams that are they sort of stand out. They're not necessarily the pros, but they're typical overseas, but they might be paid players, and they tend to stand out, particularly in teams that are coming up. Like you've got Mansfield, Boundary Mills, there. Jaya, I'm going to struggle to pronounce the Sri Lankan name here, but Jaya Athani, I think. He's doing very well in the wickets for Mansfield. 24 wickets at 25, fourth in the league wickets. Not doing quite so well with the bat, but I think he's obviously more of a bowler. But a team that's struggling towards the bottom, he's jumping out, and if you can have particularly if you're a weaker team coming up, if your pro is getting runs and wickets, then that can be enough to take you to mid-table on its own. It seems to be the case across the nation, but Mansfield just struggling a bit run-wise this season. I'll just jump into Mansfield. Let's have a look. Cowson Carrington. So, So they're right down the bottom, aren't they? They're 14 points down. It is tough. Everyone knows it's tough jumping up. I think they brought in the Notts Prem 2. Was it 2 years ago?
I think it sounds about right.
So you'd hope maybe there isn't quite that jump now than there was, but maybe it doesn't seem to be the case. But it is about what teams you can put together at the start of the season.
It is, and I think one of the highlight games for the season for me was one that we discussed with the Mansfield game earlier on the season versus Radcliffe. I mean, that one stands out as Mansfield have won twice this year. When they got bowled out for 87 in May by Radcliffe, I'm sure they weren't thinking this game's going to go that well, but then they bowled Radcliffe out for 26.
I haven't sort of calculated nationally lowest scores of the season, but I suspect that's going to be up there. It's probably something I'll do before the end of the season. I normally do a bit of it around Christmas. The last few years I've done a few sort of fun things to take the piss out of everybody, and that is one that may be revisited. And once the season's settled and the dust has settled, then people tend to look back on these things with a bit more humour, shall we say, than pointing it out to the mid-season. But that's a hell of a low score, and that's my old team as well, which is even worse. So
Radcliffe that day got bowled by Jayarathne, got 3 for 16 and thought he'd had a good day. But Dan Harris 7 for 8 off 8 overs.
Wow.
That included 2 wides.
Excellent. Well, what's he doing? You could have had 2 more wickets with those 2 wides.
In fact, there were 26 all out Radcliffe that day, and 8 of them were wides. Says a hell of 8 wides.
Well, my lowest ever is 20. I've been involved in a 20, but that was in youth cricket, so I don't know what yours is.
My lowest ever I've been involved in was bowling a team out for 12. But that was under 17 cricket, and it's 30 odd years ago, and nobody will ever remember.
Yes, I think the lowest.
Apart from a very upset coach of our opposition at the time, because we actually took the mickey out of them, but that's a different matter altogether.
Well, that's not the time to do, is it?
No,
I think 50, about 50 or 40 is probably the lowest sort of senior total I've been involved with. But it's certainly not a 20. But these things happen. I mean, the weather then was horrendous up to that weekend. That was probably the first weekend of the season that it wasn't absolutely awful. So I suspect pitches and fresh bowlers and balls doing all sorts and batters who hadn't seen much cricket will be a lot to do with that score. So it can be forgiven.
Dan Harris has bowled quite a lot of overs this season down there for Mansfield, and his best is 7 for 8. But has he got 21 wickets? Is it total?
Harris, there we are. 8th, 21 wickets. So a lot of them came in that one game, didn't they? 7
in one game, and then 14 in all the rest of it. So it just shows you that anyone can have one of those days, and it just comes good. Or for all I know, Dan could be getting another 30 wickets in the next 10 games. But he's obviously he had the luck on his side that day as well, and it all just went for him. There's a good mix of overseas and local players who've done the rounds, I think, in the Notts Premier League there, but without a shadow. Is there anyone who stands out in terms of spectacular performances or partnerships that you've seen this year in particular?
I'm not calculating partnerships at the moment, but I mean, you've got two guys with the seventhers. Giel van Vollenhoven, that sounds like another African, and he's got 7 wickets off 7.5 overs for Westbridge Fordians. So, that's a hell of a performance there.
So he got 7 for 8 off 7.5. Let's see what Dan got. Dan got his 7 for 8.
Sorry, that's balls. Got the wrong way around. It's 7 for 8. Sorry, it was 7 for 8. I was looking. My ball, for some reason, on my table, I put balls before runs. 7 for 8 again. Economy of 1.02. Reasonably handy.
Interesting. The best bowling in the league is the same, 7 for 8 from 2 players.
That was again early April. James Hinson 6 for 39. Abdul Basit at 6 for
41.
Yep, and then Savin Pereira. There he is again. 5 for 14. So there's some strong performances there.
Savin's got 19 wickets as well as his huge number of runs as well. I mean, he's also. I've just checked it now. Savin and Adi Badge, 208 runs partnership. That was last weekend. So that is the largest single partnership in the league so far. There's only been 200 partnerships. One was last weekend and one was 6 weeks ago with the beginning of June when the weather was really good. It just shows you again, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, and the weather is causing havoc with us, and I think all the Notts games got completed at the weekend. There's quite a lot of reduced totals. With Lewis.
Revised targets there, I know that, and obviously the weather did intervene in some games, but every single Premier League game got finished, and all credit to the players, staff, ground staff, all those grounds to get them done.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's lots of games here that had no chance, so I suspect they were a bit luckier than we were with the weather, but it was pretty grim at times. Hail bouncing off roofs and things like that, and
interesting.
Unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's next weekend might be similar as well. We're struggling at the moment. Hopefully
it's interesting looking at last weekend's Notts results when the only one that stood out in terms of number of runs was the Cavaliers and Carrington versus Plumtree game, because they got all their overs in and scored 520 odd runs between the two of them. That was the only game that got 50 overs in both sides. And it just shows you the difference there. Everyone else was rained off in some shape or form. And there was a lot of teams being bowled out last weekend as well. And we don't always see teams being bowled out, do we? So it just shows you that weather was having an impact on the weekend.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to, looking nationally early in the season, bowlers were having field days early season, as they tend to do. And with the weather, that the change happened. I saw it week by week. The number of people taking big wickets reduced, and then with the weather changing back to basically early April/November conditions, the bowlers come to the fore again. So anybody getting big runs at the moment, is doing very, very well.
I tend not to be a believer in these things, but it was St. Swithin's Day the other day, and it did most certainly rain.
Right,
and that should mean we're going to get 40 days worth of rain now.
Brilliant, thanks for that. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Exactly, that could wipe out the rest of this month and August. Fingers crossed that's not the case, because otherwise the season will be a bit of a shambles.
I always think with cricket seasons is you forget last season and the season before, and you think, oh, this is the worst weather we've had for years and years and years. I suspect it's fairly normal. There's certainly years I've remembered where the sun didn't seem to come out. I think actually the last few years have been pretty good. So maybe this is normal, and we've actually had some good years in terms of consistent dry weather. Certainly reading is it Scott Oliver's book, When the Legends Played in the League. I've been reading through that at bedtime the last few weeks, and certainly in the northern leagues, when they're talking about the pros over there, there seems to be a lot of rained off games. 6 in a row at one point. They're paying Gary Sobers or somebody like that, and the 6 rained off games in a row. So highly recommend the book, by the way.
Absolutely. Well, I had a funny weather story yesterday. I went to Burton Cricket Club to watch England over 60s play Australia over 60s. And England are captained by Roger Merriman, who plays down at Burton. Scored 68, I think, in an England win, which is great.
Good.
I was chatting to the wife of Will Blair, who plays for Australia over 60s, and she was telling me about how disappointed their son is this weekend because he plays up at Menai Bridge in Anglesey Bang around that way. And in his words, supposed to play T20 yesterday, rained off. On the other side of the mountain, they're playing. And getting your head around the differences, they're so used to in Australia that everyone plays on the same day, full stop, end of story. Whereas literally you could be 4, 5, 6 miles away from somewhere here, and Will Blair Jr. is sat on his backside doing nothing when his mates are on the other side of the mountain and playing cricket. That's exactly what we talked about with Notts and Derby last weekend, where there were so many washouts in Derbyshire, and then over at Notts, games are getting completed.
Yeah, I mean, my time when I spent a lot of time in Australia, and it's very consistent the weather. If it's going to piss it down, it'll piss it down. And the next day it'll be sunny. Certainly in the west where I was, I think eastern side is a bit more inconsistent. But I know the ice hockey players when I used to watch the Nottingham Panthers a lot. They used to hate the weather here because there's just no season. They used to say there's no seasons. It's just grey and miserable all year round. And obviously it's not. But I think coming from Canada, you've got these defined seasons over there. The summer's going to be nice. It's going to be freezing in winter, so it's just jumping back to Savin Pereira. The one thing that I picked up is he's been involved in the South Asian Cricket Academy this season, and that's through Twitter and other things I've noticed how well
producing players,
how well they've been doing in terms of getting players noticed, getting players picked up by teams, getting players playing second 11 cricket across the counties. And he's another one, who looks like he really deserves another look. He was an England under-19 player, did well, and then obviously has slipped through the county net. And he's played for Notts and Warwickshire second 11 this year. Unfortunately, not with, he's not put up any big numbers there, but two games is two games. Hopefully he'll get more of a chance. But it's lovely to see that in that South Asian Cricket Academy, they seem to have absolutely, really been able to put, quality players under the nose of the counties, given them really good coaching, and given players who should have been given a chance, maybe first time round, a second go. So it'd be nice to see how he does and see if anything more comes.
And it's just like you said last week. It'd be lovely to see one or two of these players getting that shot. Not just a one-off game, but that sustained shot with a county, because they get their feet under the table then, and maybe with the one day coming up in August, that's the ideal time for one or two of these to be blooded in.
Hopefully, let's keep an eye out. I mean, that's something I think we need to watch these games quite hard and see who's playing for them. It'd be lovely to see somebody like him given a go in the One Day Cup, and performing. It certainly happened last year, and I can't pull a name to mind, but there was certainly good performances from young lads last year. So especially with the 100 going on, taking the majority of eyeballs, hopefully a bit less pressure. Just helps a few players get their feet under the table. It's tough going out to bat, isn't it? It's and walking out to bat thinking, right, there could be a career, path opening here. And you've got one game to show it. That's some pressure, isn't it? So hopefully, these counties can recognise that, see the talent for what it is, and give them, like you say, a sustained chance. And
the One Day Cup all comes very fast. The games are back to back. It's the same 50 overs as what they play in the Premier League. It's the perfect opportunity for those guys to show what they've got, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Just back into Notts Prem, looking at the second division. Looks like Welbeck and Notts Unity Casuals are the two. Well, they're currently 1 and 2 with Gedling and Sherwood in 3. Welbeck well clear, 10 points clear at the moment, and Notts Unity Casuals 10 back, Gedling 2 back from that, and Gedling Sherwood came down last year. So
that's where Tom Wood's playing.
So if he can help them, spend some time, back with them playing regular cricket, I think
that'll be interesting during August, won't it? Because Tom is obviously going to be playing some one-day stuff for Derbyshire.
So it might affect their chances there. But
especially on the back of his good Vitality Blast that he had. He had a great T20 with them.
Well, absolutely.
I'm sure they're going to want to put him in the longer form.
a few of the lads I was coaching under 13s saw that knocks and were mightily impressed. So it was nice to see.
Definitely. So where do we want to go next week, do you think you? Where do we want to go, north or south? We've done Derbyshire, we've done Notts, so we sort of, between us, got a good idea what's going on. Do you want to go north up to Lancashire, or do you want to go south down to Surrey, or a bit of mix? What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was thinking we should maybe combine a few. We're heading into areas we don't know as well. So in terms of statistical reviews, I know the Liverpool comp, across my stats across the Premier Leagues, they are very, very strong. So that's always stands out. There's some really big clubs up there, so that's always a fun league to look at.
And it's a league I know pretty well from back in the day.
Well, there you go. That's probably where we should head next then.
Let's head towards the northwest, and we'll make a call during the week to decide. We might pick on a couple of Lancashire clubs as well, or even the new league over in Greater Manchester. Plenty going on up there, isn't there?
Yeah, and there's a few people jumping out in the stats from that league as well. It's difficult to gauge the quality in terms of how it compares, compared with the other leagues. But I would think that there's certainly money coming there, good pros, good players. It seems to be doing well.
Definitely.
Yeah, but worth a look.
Brilliant. I look forward to chatting with you next week, Hugh. We'll get up northwest, talk about the Premier League then, and hopefully between now and then, one or two people are going to get some cricket, just depending on what goes on outside with the weather. Yeah,
well, my under 11s that I coach failed miserably. I'm just looking out the window at the rain coming down. I've got an under 13 match tonight, and that's looking like that's going to be off as well.
Good start. Good start. You can stick with the stats instead this week then.
Yeah, well, frustrating. Luckily we had that nice bit in the middle, but it's this start and end is looking dodgy, and then the kids will be off on holiday.
Exactly.
So we might have to just give up on a few games, but hopefully we'll get some in.
Most definitely. Great to speak with you, Hugh. Speak to you next week.
Cheers
now.
Umps MORE Beer Pumps.